All right, welcome back. You know, there are a lot of facets of this amazing American governmental system that we enjoy here in the United States of America. And two parts of that amazing system are with us right now. One guy who's been in the trenches, he's been a legislator, he's been down in Washington. Vito Fossella joins me right now. And at the same time, Alan Sanders joins us. He's a former Time Magazine senior reporter, professor emeritus of political science at St. Peter's University in Jersey City. And I'm interested to see the guys who have been legislators and the teachers of American government and get both you guys' perspective on this. Alan, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So, Alan, as a great teacher of American government, in your view, are we showing the world our best right now or our worst?
Well, I mean, I think the process right now is counting the votes, and I think we're showing our best in that sense. You know, when you talk about a campaign, excuse me, when you talk about a campaign, candidates show their best and they show their worst. So all the dirty laundry is out during a campaign. But once you get down to the actual electoral process and you're actually counting the votes, that's really what's really great about the United States. Remember, the voters are the ultimate check and balance. There's checks and balances in the system, the governmental system, but ultimately it's the voters. And so when you get down to the counting process, and we've seen so much participation, people standing in lines and people sending in mail ballots, voting in whichever way they feel comfortable during this pandemic period, I think it shows our best.
Professor, and John and I typically like to use sports analogies to relate them to politics, and every team, no matter what sport, in the off season, you always try to figure out, not even during the week, but let's say the off season is how do we improve the team, how do we improve the league. If you, in front of a class of students today or next week, for the sake of argument, what are the teachable moments about what's happening right now, and do you have a sense of how we should or could improve our system that at least I believe it can always be improved?
Right. Well, in terms of the campaign that we've just gone through, I would say stop the insults, stop the name calling, and actually argue policy. A lot of the campaign was centered around name calling and accusing people of being this or being that. What you really want to do is tell the folks, look, you should vote for me because this is the vision. These are the policies that I want to pursue during the next 4 years, and stop the name calling. The name calling doesn't help anything. It's rather childish. It's like saying, you know, well, you've got epidermis all over you, which sounds very impressive and sounds like you're sickly, but epidermis means nothing more than skin. So rather than talk about that, talk about the policy. So I think that can be improved. And I think a lot of the media, the talk show hosts on radio, on television, in the cable, if they stop using names and stop categorizing people, but just simply say, look, these are the policies of these two people. Interview them if you can, and that would improve the system or the campaign. In terms of the system, my personal view is that we should simply get rid of the Electoral College. It's an antiquated system. It was basically a compromise. It was basically a punt down the road because the framers couldn't agree on the system by which to select the president. And so they created this Rube Goldberg kind of contraption that we're now dealing with, and waiting out the results of various states. Look, the president and the vice president are the only two officers of the land that are elected nationally, nationwide. So why not simply have a simple popular vote total in which the president can then say, not that I got this state or that I got that state, but that I got the majority of the votes of Americans. And that would be a much more unifying system.
Hey, Professor, I like to dig into that a little bit more. Sure. Doesn't that kind of point us in the direction of, when you say, well, the president doesn't say I got this state or that state. The presidential campaigns were both spent over $1 billion in this cycle, and there's probably more in collateral spending, but wouldn't all that money just focus on the major population areas and kind of leave the rest of America out in the cold?
Not at all, because if you don't count the vote according to states, every vote counts, no matter where it is located. And so, you don't concentrate on a particular state because its urban, rural makeup favors your campaign, or ignore it because it doesn't favor your campaign. If you have a national election, really every vote counts, no matter where it's located. So you would actually be traveling, you'd see the candidates traveling and appealing to the broader array of voters. As it now stands, if you are a citizen of a state that clearly tilts one way or the other, you're not being targeted very much by the campaigns, either one, because they want to concentrate on the so-called battleground states. And those are the people who hear on their radio, on television, the door knocking, the telephone calls. These are the ones who are being bombarded by the campaigns. And it's kind of unfortunate that those of us who live in the other states, have to sort of cross our fingers and our toes and hope that the people in the battleground states vote as we would like them to vote. It would be much easier if you simply cast your vote like every other American and we just tally up the totals.
So, Professor, shifting gears a little bit, one of the things that always, I at least for full disclosure, I feel that people overlook just everyday people for how and truly what they believe is important. As you said, and I absolutely agree with you, just tell me, I'll tell you where I stand on the issues, I'll tell you my beliefs, I'll tell you what I want to do. You choose if you think you agree with me, you choose the other guy or gal if you disagree or agree with her. So you're in front of a classroom of young people, there's always this ongoing, the young people, they're out of touch, and I'm generalizing, they don't know what's going on. When you're in front of a classroom or in front of a young group of young people, what was on their mind? How did they perceive or look at elections and government and politics?
Well, most young people, certainly when they're in college, don't think too much about politics. At least that's not, my experience is that's not at the top of their minds. What is at the top of their minds is getting their education and getting a good job upon graduation. That's what they really are focusing on, getting the training, getting the skills, and making the connections, the networking connections for a job. That's their preoccupation. They're not so much concerned about what's happening in Congress or what the president is saying or doing, unless, of course, they believe it touches them personally, or what the Supreme Court is going to decide. They only start caring about it when they see a connection or a relationship to their economic well-being. So as a professor, I try to point out to them that politics is really economics. I mean, everything is political. There are winners and there are losers in the political process. And in fact, everything a student does, everything any person does, is political, okay? Politics really determines of who gets what, when, and how. That's a standard definition of politics. Who gets what, when, and how. And that's why elections are so passionate. But if you think about it, that's what every person, when they get up in the morning, is really think about. Who is going to get what, when, and how? Typically, it's who, me. The what is whatever you want to get. When is hopefully as soon as possible. And the how is the complicated question to answer. How are you going to get it? But if you understand that everybody gets up in the morning and tries to figure out who's going to get what, when, and how, you realize that everyone is really a political person, a political animal.
Well, that sounds...
And that's what I try to share with them, to understand that everything you are doing is ultimately political in that sense. And therefore, you should really care about what the Congress, what the president, and what the courts do, because the rules and the decisions that are handed down and the policies that are advocated will affect who gets what, when, and how, and that very much could affect you personally.
So let me ask you this. I do want to go back to the national popular vote thing. Would you be supportive of some federal guidelines on ballot access that would expand the amount of candidates that would be in the race, or we should have a national election but still have fragmented state board of election rights?
Well, under our Constitution right now, the primary actors who regulate the primary actors who regulate elections, access to the ballot, the rules for voting, that is to say machines or paper ballots or whatever, that decision-making is left to the states under our Constitution. But there is a clause that says Congress can step in, okay? So the primary actors are the states, but Congress has the power to step in, and it has done so in a number of ways, with fundraising rules, for instance, that Congress has said, you can only raise money in certain ways and not in other ways. I think the way to go is to really nationalize the election process. That is to say, Congress really should set up guidelines as to what is the appropriate way to vote, how you qualify for ballots for national office, not for state office, but how do you qualify for national office, and have a process for counting the ballots that is a national process. And it should be a process that encourages as many people to vote as possible and that seeks to register as many people as possible to vote. And that would be for federal elections. For state elections, I mean, it really should be up to the states how they want to do it. But if we're talking about the president, the vice president, the members of the House and the members of the Senate, I don't see, these are the national officers of the country, and it seems to me quite logical that the process and the methods and the reach to get as many people to vote should be in the hands of Congress with legislation, national legislation passed by the Congress and signed by the president.
Very good. All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Professor Emeritus of American Government at St. Peter's University. Alan, thank you very much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, and you guys have a great day.
You too now. Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a quick break right here. Back in just a few minutes on the other side. Stick with us.